We begin with the EU's sixth round of sanctions on Russia. Brussels says it wants all member states to stop buying oil from Moscow, and they're looking to significantly scale down imports of natural gas. If approved, the sanctions will involve the phasing out of purchases of Russian crude oil within the next 6 months. The proposal also calls for a ban on refined oil products by the end of next year. The European Commission also wants to kick out Russia's largest financial institution, Sberbank, from the SWIFT international payments network. But not all EU members are on board. Hungary says it needs at least 3 to 5 years to cut its dependence on Russian fuel.
Hungary could only agree to these sanctions if crude oil transport via pipeline is exempt. In that case, the security of our energy supply would be upheld. As this is not so, Brussels' sanctions package would destroy the security of Hungary's energy supply.
We're ready to support this decision. If the Czech Republic is allowed some postponement until capacity is increased in oil pipelines that deliver to the country, we're trying to get a postponement for 2 or 3 years.
Well, despite persistently high oil prices and calls to raise output, OPEC and its allies have so far failed to keep up with their own growth targets. In April, the oil producers cartel managed to raise global crude production by just 10,000 barrels per day, far short of its goal of 430,000 barrels. That's as output from Libya plunged by 150,000 barrels per day. Its largest oil fields, El Sharara and El Feel, along with the Zweitina port, were forced to shut down by protesters. Nigeria, another major exporter, produced 40,000 fewer barrels per day in April than the previous month. Analysts say a lack of timely investments and a legal battle over the Bonny Light stream are holding up output. Other OPEC members from Africa also failed to pump more oil in April. In fact, the group has managed to raise output to their monthly target just once since the strategy was launched in November.
OPEC said that it couldn't be held responsible for what is happening around the world in terms of people not wanting to take Russian oil, those sanctions which are being imposed. It also said, and this is really interesting, that it now wondered exactly what global demand would look like for the rest of the year, because China, of course, doubling down on its zero COVID policy, which has, of course, knocked the whole global system in terms of supply chains as well. So, yeah, I mean, OPEC very much saying that we're going to release a bit more, a trickle. But as you say, oil prices have risen once again. They are steadfastly remaining above that $100 a barrel for Brent crude, which many people this time last year were sort of looking at that and thinking, be interesting if we actually make that high. It's not got anywhere near where it was in March. But clearly, as the conflict in Ukraine continues and more sanctions are introduced, there are a lot of questions about the way that the oil price is going to go.
Well, let's get more on this now with economist and independent energy analyst Cornelia Meyer. She's the CEO and chairperson of Meyer Resources, and she joins us now from Bern. Good to have you back on the program, Cornelia. We know that Europe is hugely dependent on Russian natural gas, but what about oil? Can Europe afford to cut off Russian oil supplies?
Yes, it can, but it will take time and it will be very expensive. What you have is especially the older refineries to the east, and that's why the Czech Republic, that's like Slovakia, and that is also why Hungary say we need time if you want us to wean ourselves off Russian oil. They're geared towards Russian grades like the Urals grade, and older refineries can't just be retuned. Yes, they can be retuned, but it will take time. So yes, Europe can do it, but like everything in oil, it's not a light switch.
Now, Moscow says an EU oil embargo will hurt Europe more than it will hurt Russia. But what's the truth here? How much will an EU boycott of Russian oil, in fact, impact Moscow?
It will impact Moscow, but Moscow will just sell its oil elsewhere. It will redirect the oil trade flows. You know, Russia can still export to China, can still export to India. India and China have been buying. They're buying at a discount, so Russia will have to live with a discount. but it will still be able to buy, and then the Europeans will have to get heavier crudes, maybe from Kuwait or from Iraq, where they produce heavier crudes into their refineries. But it's going to be costly. Retuning these refineries is going to be costly. Readjusting trade flows is always a costly proposal.
We know oil prices have recovered significantly since the pandemic, when demand for oil all but dried up. But even so, the producers like Saudi Arabia and the rest of the OPEC cartel are really rebuffing requests from the likes of President Biden and other world leaders to increase their output in order to bring oil prices down. Do you think OPEC Plus should rethink that stance and pump out more oil?
Well, as your previous package showed, is that there's some people which still have spare capacity. That is Russia, that is the UAE, that is to a certain degree Iraq. Kuwait is running out of spare capacity, but Africa is really struggling. Libya is struggling, Nigeria is struggling. They're all struggling to keep up. And on the other hand, also you have to see that the Western countries, the IEA's road to net zero, told everybody you should stop invest in oil and gas and in hydrocarbons. So you can't on one hand say stop investing in hydrocarbons but pump more oil. That seriously does not go down well. And when you talk OPEC plus, Russia is a core anchor of the Declaration of Cooperation, which is the agreement that frames OPEC plus, the 10 non-OPEC nations and the 13 OPEC nations.
Interesting. And what about the issue of Russian gas? We know that economies like Germany and Italy are hugely dependent on Russian gas. Do you expect that the EU will look to tackle that at some point, or perhaps are they too afraid to cut off supplies for the moment?
It's not possible. And if you look at Germany, even the deputy chancellor and economic minister, Robert Habeck, who's a green, so he's in no way, shape or form a friend of hydrocarbons. He said we cannot wean ourselves out that quickly. He said he's worried for social stability if they wean themselves off too quickly. And there is the whole chemical industry, BASF and so on. They need the gas to produce, and if you don't get that gas, the tubes for dialysis will not be produced, and many other things. There are real jobs attached to it. What the Germans are doing and what the Italians are doing, they're going to other places. Mr. Draghi went to Angola to try and get some LNG. Mr. Habeck went to Qatar to try to get some LNG. The problem with LNG is that it's on 25-year long-term contracts, so and there's just not enough to go around. So also there's a time lag. Again, it's not a time switch. Plus the receiving infrastructure is not sufficiently there in Europe. That's the regasification terminals and the pipelines connecting those terminals to the existing pipeline structure.